a 24-year sweep of time, as it played out in locations as diverse as Austin, Texas, Washington, D.C., Greenwich, Connecticut, Idlewild, California, Nice, France, St. Moritz, Switzerland, and Girona, Spain. For most of the past century, Europeans had dominated the sport of cycling and became its most avid fans. But in Europe, cycling was very much a working-class sport. Professional cyclists came from small farm towns or poor urban areas, and their pay reflected it. As recently as the 1970s and 1980s, some of the greatest names in the sport, like Frenchman Bernard Hinault and Belgian Eddy Merckx, made money that would look laughable even to second-tier professionals by the mid-2000s. For decades, few Americans paid any attention to professional cycling at all. But once that began to change, it would be the Americans, the newcomers to the sport, who would change its economics forever, commanding the richest paychecks the sport had ever seen. Cycling's first $1 million salary went, in 1991, to Greg LeMond, an American who won the Tour de France 3 times after moving to France at age 19. Next came Armstrong, riding on teams with big American sponsors, including the U.S. Postal Service and corporations such as television's Discovery Channel, whose lavish funding helped drive his base pay to $4.5 million and his bonuses to $10 million by 2004. Armstrong's pay was only a tiny fraction of his overall income because of the hugely lucrative endorsement deals he signed, worth about $16.5 million that year alone. Viewing Armstrong's rise and fall through the prism of business, we see him as both tool and beneficiary of the ambitions of a small group of Americans who wanted the United States to become a major player in what had been a mainly European sport. These men aimed not just to dominate the sport, but to commercialize it and make it into a money machine. Armstrong was perfect for their goals, an extraordinary combination of athletic talent, drive, ambition, and ruthlessness. And once he began winning, he became the chairman and CEO of the business of making himself rich and famous. Aided by a vast, interconnected network of supporters, he kept tight control of his image, presenting himself through the media and through his sponsorships as an all-American hero, sports prodigy, cancer survivor who came back from near death to win his first Tour de France, founder of a multi-million-dollar charity that offered hope, help, and support to thousands of people suffering from cancer. Yet Armstrong's public persona was very different from his private one. The great athlete turned cancer activist and secular saint had a dark side that very few people outside of his inner circle knew about. While he portrays himself as a poor underdog, he came from a reasonably comfortable middle-class home in Plano, Texas, and also was indulged and self-absorbed and arrogant from boyhood. Although Lance seemed to be always searching for a father figure, he struggled to maintain lasting relationships with many of his mentors. He surrounded himself with friends, girlfriends, and business partners, and needed and craved their attention, reassurances, and support. But he had a habit of exploiting those who cared about him. This book arose from the more than 100 interviews we conducted and the many articles we wrote in the Wall Street Journal about Lance and his take-no-prisoners war with former teammates, federal investigators, and anti-doping officials over accusations that he had doped to win the Tour de France. Our work for the Journal was focused on offering the first detailed accounts of the mechanics and culture of the U.S. Postal Service team's doping program, and as such, it ended up playing a role in the events that culminated in his downfall. The tipping point for Armstrong and his circle came in early 2010, when his former U.S. Postal Service teammate and protege, Floyd Landis, sent explosive emails to a small handful of men in the top ranks of professional cycling. In these emails, Landis admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs and blood transfusions during his years racing alongside Lance, and accused many of his former postal teammates of taking part in doping as well. Describing Lance as the ringleader of these doping practices, Landis was saying what a few people in the press had suspected for years, but no one had been able to prove. For a month, Landis's emails